analyst, Mr. Raymond Ken Mbata. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you very much for having me.
You're welcome. All right, let's look at our issue. President Joe Biden's administration will announce $200 million of new weapons aid for Ukraine as soon as Tuesday, U.S. officials told Reuters, as it begins to dole out $6.2 billion of funds discovered after a Pentagon accounting error overvalued billions of Ukraine aid to two U.S. officials said on Monday. In May, the Pentagon announced it had mistakenly assigned a higher than warranted value to the U.S. weaponry shipped to Kyiv when staff used replacement value instead of depreciated value to tabulate the billions worth ammunition, missiles, and other equipment sent to Ukraine. Ukraine needs a weaponry that can be shipped from U.S. stocks in the matter of days or weeks so it can keep up its fight to repel Russia's invasion. The accounting error works to Kyiv's benefit because more equipment can be sent. Beginning to use these discovered funds is significant because they represent the last of the previously congressionally authorized $25.5 billion worth of presidential drawdown authority the administration can utilize to ship weapons from U.S. stocks in the event of an emergency, the U.S. officials said. Now, this Russian-Ukraine war is actually taking dimensions that we really do not understand. But let's come to you, Raymond. What's your take on this new move by U.S. to send more financial aids for weaponry to Ukraine?
Okay, I see that first of all as a function of American deterrence. Deterrence in the fact that they are using Ukraine as a test course for aggression, suppression of Russian forces in Ukraine. Since Russia attacked Ukraine, the US has been trying to make Ukraine the last place that Russia is going to intrude into, and also use that as a bargaining chip to welcome Ukraine to NATO as a way of like intruding to the backyards of Russia. So I think that the funds that has been sent was directly from the president's office. He didn't need to take permission from the Congress. So it's from the president's prerogative as for emergency services, and he channeled that to Ukraine. And that's been handled by the military-industrial complex of America, although Lockheed Martin and co are in charge of distribution of those weapons. So I think America is using those weapons to boost NATO's presence in Ukraine and also to assist Ukraine to win the war against Russia.
Now, talking about boosting NATO's presence in Ukraine, we are aware that up to this moment, NATO has not given Ukraine any assurance of its alliance with them, not even in the nearest future, even after the war. And now, if you look at, again, the situation of the war, the fact that after the Wagner Group withdrew their support for Russia, we had some sort of ceasefire. And then after March, US sent some munitions, cluster munitions to Ukraine, and then they began to send their own offensives against the Russians. And it seemed like Russia had to wake up to counter offensives. Don't you think this is going to spike up another level of this war?
In my own opinion, I think that Russia made the first step by invading Ukraine. Although they had their own reasons because of separatist movements within the eastern borders of Ukraine and Russia, and they assisted these people to invade Ukraine in order to give those people independence, but it was just a microcosm of the Ukrainian population that wanted that independence, and they are at the borderlands with Russia. It wasn't enough to invade the full country of Russia. I think that was the first misstep. In war, you must be able to win the war even before you start the war. So I think Russia has their own cake to eat back, and Ukraine has started a counteroffensive. The hope of America and the Western world, Western Europe, is that Ukraine should succeed in the war in order to spite Russia and also remove one from the world powers per se, to degrade one of the world powers and also be able to face China with that same threat and deterrence that, like what we did to Russia, we could do to Ukraine. What we did to Russia, we could do to China, and we could also do that to North Korea.
So don't you think that sending weapons across is like passing a message saying we're ready for whatever is going to come our way?
Yeah, definitely. He who wants peace must fight a war. A war has to be won for peace to be won. So you cannot remove deterrence and violence, and even in the search for peace. For he who must be able to drop the gun, somebody has to be able to pick the gun up. So that is the policy that the US is using in this debacle that is unfolding in us. Nobody wants the war. A lot of families have been detached.
Now, do you also envisage what Russia would do in response to this gesture?
Russia has limited forces right now.
Oh.
Yes, Russia is depleted. Russia has no replenishment for their armory being finished, and Ukrainian forces are using cheap drones to even light up the remaining reserves that they have. So, and Russia is trying to sign new agreements with China, even get to Iran, even get to India to replenish their stock. And I thought that they would have seen that lapses even before going into the war, because Ukraine doesn't even need to produce anything, and they are going to get all the supplies they need. I don't know where Russia is going to get theirs from.
Well, let's just keep our fingers crossed and see how this is going to turn out should the US eventually send this support to Ukraine. This is how much we will take on today's program, International Tit-bit. Thank you so much, Raymond, for joining us.
Thank you very much for having me.
And thank you, Valentina Lawrence.
It is always a pleasure.